So if you had to define home, what do you think it would be? And that's an interesting question, because instantly you're taking something that is tangible and experiential and asking a very metaphysical question to it. So we're on a journey to find out what is home.
Ever since I was born, every few years, my family moves from place to place, and from country to country even. I've never had one place that I could say I belong, or one town or one village, because my roots have been planted over so many different places, and also torn up in so many different areas. And I've seen so many different cultures, I've been through so many different cities and towns, I've met thousands of people in my lifetime, and honestly the adventure couldn't be any better. But what was the cost?
So we got to go over a few things first still. First off, let's go with how this idea came to be. I was doing a study abroad in Europe, and if you've read any of the articles, you understand what happened. In short, I'd never been to Italy. I had never been to Switzerland, except for the airport, but you really can't count that. I'd never been to Germany, except for the airport, but you really can't count that. And I'd never been to the Czech Republic. So those were 4 countries that I had never been to, but I felt completely at home in far more than the United States. The big issue started when we landed in Rome, and all of a sudden, I felt at peace. I don't know if you know what it feels like to not experience an emotion for a long period of time, and then all of a sudden be hit with it on a full force scale. That's what I experienced. It was mind-boggling. It was deep. It was intense. I didn't know what was going on. But all of a sudden I felt at peace. And I didn't know how to explain it until I started going, this feels more home than America. So that's what's kicked this off. Then it took 2 years of wrestling with it, doing things in college, trying to pitch ideas like, hey, I want to do this, but not really getting the opportunity. And then all of a sudden, I got down to my senior capstone, and due to some miscommunication, I ended up being given the opportunity to drop what I had for my previous capstone and do this personal project. And I decided to take the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to just go ahead and dive in for school credit. That was Rough Draft What is Home. This is the final product. But it was a sense of hope. There was a sense of belonging in Europe that really made me question, what does place mean when it comes to home? Since I had moved around so often, I'd lost that. And this brought it back to mind. So what is home? That's a great question. Home is a multifaceted piece. Home is complex. Home doesn't stand out as one particular thing, but home means something deep to the very soul of all of us. Like a puzzle, you take one of the pieces away and home doesn't look like home anymore. Searching for that belonging, searching for that piece can take a long time. It can tax your very soul. As I started doing these interviews, as I started talking to people, as I started doing my own research, some key things kept coming back up around that are like some of the puzzle pieces, and some of them can be condensed into smaller, tinier pieces, condensed. They can be packed together to be larger pieces. But these were some of the big issues that kept coming up in my research. Familiarity, place, security, and belonging. Those were the big ones. And all those had to do with some sort of connection between people, your possessions, a familiarity of culture, one that you know, between food and traditions, meanings, something that means something to you, and bonding through activities. So, what are some practical ways that you can still implement in home right where you are? through common shared activities. My good friend Jacob Rogers talks about CrossFit gyms. And here's a sample of that audio that you can listen to right now.
But yeah, I think it's just a matter of like finding activities to engage in certain communities where you have some sort of coinciding interest. CrossFit gyms aren't that dissimilar from churches, weirdly enough, like in my opinion. There's a little bit of like a cult following type thing, not to cast aspersions on churches, but I just couldn't think of a better way of phrasing it at this point. And everyone's working towards some kind of common goal or has like a shared interest in something. Lots of people like meet the significant others there. No, yeah. So I do think they're weirdly similar.
Churches are a great place to find people, find community and belonging. Me and Drew talked about that it's kind of hard to determine what you would do if you don't have a church background. And honestly, that's kind of how I'm running into things now, is if you grew up as a Christian, how do you meet people outside of a church setting?
For like looking for community, I don't know what people do if they like don't have a church, like how they make friends if they move to a new place. I guess you'd probably start with like coworkers, but because of just being raised a Christian, that's where I immediately look for it. Like just a single guy in the church, one of the things I noticed was if I want to have active community, have people in my life, I don't get the opportunity of a wife or a girlfriend to just more or less kind of throw at another person and make them feel sorry for us. I had to put the effort in of learning to cook, learning to be hospitable, understanding what space meant, being able to create a space to allow people to be a part of my home.
Cooking and hosting. Having people in your home is a great way to start building community. It's interesting that even the Last Supper, one of the most important meals where we get communion, the Eucharist from, is around the dinner table. So I think that's like a really significant thing to note, is that food draws people together unlike almost anything else. And sharing your food with strangers usually turns strangers into friends. Because let's be honest, you're not going to invite somebody you hate over for dinner all the time unless they're family and you're obligated to. So let's talk about some resources. We've got TCK Tales. So yes, TCK Tales. You're wondering, you've thought about it, but guess what? If you listen to the podcast, you know how to find them. If you didn't listen to the podcast, I'm going to leave a link right here. Let's listen to the clip that Jonathan talks about why he started this. Love this podcast. Love it.
So I created this podcast partially for my benefit as a way for me to process a lot of things and for people who are in a similar situation to me. And it wasn't until I heard other third cultural kids' stories about what they were going through that I realized, oh, that thing that you just said, that's what I've been experiencing for the past 12 years. I have that thing. How did you fix that thing? That's how I can fix that thing. And that's what I wanted to do for other people, because I rightfully assumed that what I was going through and what I went through was not isolated only to me. So those are it's a dual goal. I call it equal parts education and equal parts therapy.
So TCK Tales is a great step, a next step, or a before this step to get plugged in, to listen to, and to understand how different life events can change how we interact with everything around us. If you've read the long article to this, or if you're currently reading the long article, hey, congratulations. You're hearing a lot of quotes from this book right here. This book was basically my aha, you understand how I feel moment to the 10th degree. This is by Leonard. I'm going to put the last name here because I'm not even going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, dude. But it's No Home Like Place. And this book just really stuck it to it, like how I feel, how so many other of my friends feel that have gone through situations that were very similar to him. Unlike me, he was a military kid and he moved around a lot. But he writes about so many different experiences that I was just reading and highlighting, going, yes, that's me. Yes, yes, I feel that exact same thing. And it's this loss of place. For him, place is the big portion of home, the last big puzzle piece that this generation seems to not understand or get. And I would say that for me was like a really big piece to the what is home. I don't think you can narrow it down just to place, but I think that this resource gave a great sign as to speaking that it has a lot to do with place. And since we haven't acknowledged that, we're now suffering the consequences. I highly recommend this book to anybody. It is a phenomenal read. I would not wish anybody to go through the lack of belonging or sense of home that I have had to go through. That's why I really hope that this gets you started in the research and finding out what is home to you.
So what is home? When we think about what is home, we recognize that it is a multifaceted piece. Something that encompasses so many parts that you can't define it. But you can see it. You can see it in the places that you've been, in the people that you're with, in the experiences that you have from the music, from the activities that you do, the common interests and goals that you have, from the food that you eat. It is your culture that brought you up and taught you how to live. This idea of home starts in your neighborhood. It starts with you. It starts at the table. This is what home is.